I'm pulling out to all my Airbnbs with my vision board. Day one starts off with the circle of life. Is it possible to have all 10? What helped me was asking myself, like, okay, if I'm not at a 10 right now, what would it take for me to be at a 10? These journal prompts were straight to the point and really, really good if you just want to dig a little deeper. Running a marathon sounds great, like from the outside, like, check, I ran a marathon, hee hee. But then the day-to-day, like the actual running and training part, that sounds terrible. I don't know about you, but for me, it's like not the best in results. And now I understand why. Like I was setting goals that maybe in the day-to-day just weren't something that I actually wanted to do. There's a couple of things that I like doing before closing out the year. It's always been very different, but the one that I've created this year, like the life audit and check-in, I've really, really enjoyed it. So I want to share all the different exercises and prompts that I've done because it's the best moment to kind of look at what you've done one year, close that chapter, and then get ready to start off the next on the right foot. So basically, I divided it up into 5 different categories: wellness, personal, business, relationships, and money. And I do different exercises and prompts for each one. So I'm going to walk you through exactly what I did. Now, one of the main parts that changed this year is that I decided to do a transatlantic cruise, like a 14-day transatlantic cruise instead of flying back from Europe, which was honestly a great experience. I even got engaged, but it also means that I had a lot of free time, like more than enough free time. So what I normally do in like one day, this year, I ended up doing into like a 3-day retreat. So I broke it up into day 1, a day for introspect and gratitude. Day 2, like a working day, like brainstorming on what I actually want to work towards next year. And then day 3 is the creating a vision plan. Now, normally what I've done in the past is I jump straight to day 3 because I think that's like the normal thing that we're just conditioned to do, like when we set New Year's goals. And that's probably the reason why most of the time it doesn't even end up working, because we haven't done any of the previous work. And what I've realized doing this process is that it actually makes a ton of sense, because most of the goals aren't goals that we actually want to do. Like the goal sounds amazing, but that's one day or maybe even less. The actual realistic part is the day-to-day. So for example, if my goal is to hire 5 people, but the actual day-to-day of running a team sounds terrible to me, well, of course that goal is never going to be something I accomplish. Running a marathon sounds great to say, but do I want to run and train every single day? No, so of course I'm not going to accomplish that goal. So the process and everything I did, I actually have it written down here on the Notes app, which is what I followed for each day, the exercises I worked out. So let me pull it up right here under my retreat. So let's start off with day number 1. This is probably one of the coolest exercises, and I hadn't done it before. I had seen it, but I never did it. And I think it's mind-blowing and something that I want to keep doing even monthly. Day 1 starts off with the circle of life. And basically what this is a circle that has 10 different categories, and then you draw a little dot in the center. You have a smaller circle, which is like your 5 level, and then an outer circle, which means 10. So you're going one by one in all 10 categories, and you're going to give yourself a score from a 0 to a 10 of how you feel this year in that specific category. Once you're done, all you have to do is connect the dots. Now, I don't know about you guys, but for me, mine came out to be this like sharp edge thing with obviously very different scores all over in different categories. And it made me realize that sometimes we focus on what we have really low scores on, and we don't realize like we have so many areas with higher scores. Like it's okay to have high and then low, high and low. Maybe you're like me, and the first thing I wondered when I did this exercise, like as soon as I finished, the first thing I asked was like, is it possible to have all 10s? And while I don't know the answer of that yet, I don't know if it's possible to have all 10s. I haven't really met anyone that considers that they have all 10s. But what I have realized is that it doesn't mean your life has to be perfect in each area, or that the spot where you're at right now is like, that's where you're staying. No, of course, like throughout the years, you're always working towards something better and bigger and wider. in different categories, but it means like right now you're happy with the place you're at. Like if you feel content with the effort you're putting in and where you're at in that certain category, that's a 10. What helped me was asking myself like, okay, if I'm not at a 10 right now, what would it take for me to be at a 10? And why am I not there yet? Like what has to change next year for me to have all 10s? Like what would all 10s look like next year? For example, there are certain categories for me like career and work that I notice like they're very in, like they bring that circle in. And those are things I can definitely be putting in a lot more work next year, more structure to be in a better place, to know that I'm putting in more effort and therefore have a higher score for next year. Now, the next exercise that I did on day 1 is another circle, and it's the circle of who I spent time with. So everyone says you are the sum of the 5 people that you spend the time with. So who are those people? Who were those people for me this year? What I did was literally another circle, and I started filling in like a pie chart of who I'm spending time with. Now for me, since I'm traveling, it really made me realize that traveling gets lonely. Like that's something that I already knew. I've noticed it this year. It also makes you notice that it's not just who you're spending like physical time with, who you're talking with on the phone, like who you're staying in touch with virtually, who you're consuming from. Like it doesn't have to be both ways. There are so many people that we consume from that we're literally spending more time listening to these people, listening to podcasts, to books, versus spending time with other people or maybe interacting with other people in real life. So for each of these exercises, not only am I doing the circle, like the check-in of where I'm at currently, but underneath I'm doing the same exact circle of where I want to be next year. So that way I'm giving myself like that visual image of what needs to change. So for example, for me next year, I really want to work on finding more aligned friends that are also traveling, that we can talk and like go through those stages together. Also friends that are building businesses. Now, the third exercise I did on day 1, keep in mind you can do this in a full day. Like these shouldn't be taking that long, but you also want to make sure that you're not rushing this process. I think this was like a really cool like me time moment to just check in and analyze a full year. And I think that's a beautiful time to have. So this next circle is basically a circle of how you are spending your money. How much is going to bills, like what's going to Amazon, on Sephora, on this, on that. Most of the times we think something, and then when we actually look at the numbers, it's completely different from the reality. For this part, what I did was I literally pulled up my bank account, both personal and business accounts, to get a clear image on where the money is going in both aspects. For business, it was extremely easy because I just pulled up my Relay account. I've been using Relay for more than 4 years now, and it's a pinch me moment now to say that I'm partnering with them and that they're sponsoring this video because I've been a super fan since day 1. And Relay already makes a lot of processes in my life so easy. But this one I was super surprised and grateful because even a quick like end of the year check-in was less than 5 minutes with Relay. So as I mentioned in a previous video that I did showing exactly how I pay myself from a business, you might have seen that there's multiple accounts, and that's something that's very normal when you do open up your free Relay account and you also use Profit First. You're usually going to have these 4 accounts: operating expenses, owner's pay, profit, and taxes. This basically allows you to keep everything sorted and not combined in one account where you have no idea like what's what, how much you're spending on each thing, and how much you should be using on each thing for your business. So within a minute, I can literally glance at my bank account, have a clear snapshot on what each thing is, how much was put towards each category, which would definitely not be possible if I had everything in one business account. So for the circle of how I'm spending my money in the business category, what I did was dive into that operating business account and check everything of where the business is going, like softwares, tools, hiring. What are we spending money on? And then for personal, it started off by looking at the business one and owner's pay, like how much am I paying myself out? And then going to my personal bank and looking at, okay, I'm paying myself out this amount, like how much is actually going to bills, what percentage, how much is going to beauty, travel, all these different categories that most of the time we're like, no, like I'm just paying like my living expenses, when in reality, we're spending on like all these extra curricular things that many times you don't get a full glimpse of, okay, what's that snapshot like? Now, this year, if we go back to that main first exercise, the circle of life, my money category was around like a 6, 7 this year, which was definitely not the case, or it wouldn't have been the case if I had done this exercise years ago when I started my business. I remember back in those years, I would probably have given myself like a 3 or 4, because having your own business and managing your own money, like it's not easy. And that's something that not a lot of people talk about. Like you have all this financial advice and then people telling you to use this and hire this and that, but no one actually walks you through how much or what percentage should be like the optimal for a healthy business. I think one of the main reasons why I can give myself a high score on the money category this year is because I feel like that sense of peace in knowing that I'm following a great money financial system that has kept me in check for years, and I literally see how each thing looks so organized, and I'm seeing it even in like my profit account, which I didn't have back then. So if you don't feel like that peaceful sensation and you do have a business or you're planning on starting a business this new year, that's like one of your main goals, I highly recommend looking into Relay, having your different accounts by following the profit first system, because it really it just gives you that peace of mind, and opening an account is completely free. There's no minimum balances and you can easily do it in like 5 minutes. All you have to do is go to tools.theloragomez.com/relay and open up your free account. I'm feeling good with the business side, but I know I need to put a little more work into the personal side, because I am also following percentages. For business, I follow the profit first percentages, and for personal, I recently started incorporating remittance at these percentages, which is 50 to 60% to fixed costs, 5 to 10 to savings, 10% to investments, and my absolute favorite, 20 to 35 to guilt-free spending. So whether that's travel, beauty, clothes, like whatever you like spending on. For me, it's travel. By following those percentages, you basically feel that same peace of mind, but instead of business, for your personal side. So that's something that if I had to give myself a score on the personal side, it would be a little lower than on the business one. So I want to get more strategic with following the percentages on this side too. Now, to close off, the last exercise I did on this first day of introspect and gratitude was to just write a letter thanking this year for everything that has happened. I think this exercise just made me feel like such tingling sensations all over, because most of the time we remember like the big things, but we don't remember the simple day-to-day little details that literally have made such an impact in this chapter that's closing. So I highly recommend doing that. If you haven't done it, it feels amazing. And what I recommend doing, which I think was really cool that I did, I started looking through my camera roll, because we snap pictures of like the tiniest things that we forget. So if you're writing your letter and you go through your camera roll, just write down like, I'm so thankful for the sunset that I saw on May 10th, this rainbow that I saw while crossing the Atlantic Ocean. Now, day 2 here is where the analyzing and brainstorming and like the work comes in. What I did here was I pulled up my circle of life, the first exercise that I did. I looked at all the categories and I basically summarized it into the main 5 categories: wellness, personal, business, relationships, and money. I pulled out a journal and I just started journaling and asking questions. In wellness, like what's my score now and what would a 10 look like? A 10 would look like this and this. Maybe I'll run a marathon. And then I started jotting down, okay, if I run a marathon, like what would that look like day to day? And then that's when I realized, hold on, running a marathon sounds great. Like from the outside, like check, I ran a marathon, hee hee. But then the day to day, like the actual running and training part, that sounds terrible. Like that's not something I want to do. So that's when I realized like, no, we need to scratch this goal out, go back to the top and make a new realistic goal of what having a 10 in wellness would look like for me. And I repeated this with each of the 5 categories. And I think this is what really helps to get like that clear mental picture of, okay, in each category, this is what I'm working towards. This is where I'm at. This is what I want my day-to-day to look like for each category. Because like I said, I think in the past, I've always jumped to, let's make the vision board and the Pinterest and this and that. And it doesn't really end up working for me. I don't know about you, but for me, it's like not the best in results. And now I understand why. Like I was setting goals that maybe in the day-to-day just weren't something that I actually wanted to do. And I promise doing this for each of the 5 categories is going to be mind-blowing with the things you realize and how you know, like if you give yourself time and if you're actually writing it down, like you know what you do want and what you actually don't want. So as soon as I finished up with that, then came the best and most exciting part, which I left for day 3, which is actually creating a vision. So that's where the Pinterest came out, the quotes, the pictures, like all the fun stuff that we usually run towards. that's when that came out. Now, I've become very cautious with saying like my New Year's goals, because after reading the book Atomic Habits, I realized that it's not really about the goals we set, but the systems we put into place in order to reach the goal. So I broke down like the goals into literally quarterly things, monthly things, weekly things, and then day-to-day actions that I could create systems for. So for example, in wellness, if my main thing that I'm trying to accomplish is work out 30 minutes before sitting down to work, to do emails, to do anything, like that's the first thing. I went into my Google Calendar, I blocked off the time. And first of all, like mentally, I know that I'm not scheduling any meetings before then. Like I opened up my phone every day. That's the first thing I need to do. And another great thing that I learned from the book was leaving out your things in a location where you see them, so that way you actually get to it. So for me, by leaving my clothes out already picked the night before, it being the first thing I see in the morning, it's like less restriction. I'm more excited to do it, and there's definitely more probability that I'm working out before doing anything else just by doing that simple thing. I used Google Calendar basically for all of the 5 categories to implement each thing that I want to bring to life. Even in the relationships category, like scheduling a monthly check-in with Gabe, like a relationship time, making sure that I have time blocked to call my friends since I'm traveling. Like it's not that easy to stay connected. And since I do want to make sure that I'm improving that score, which for me was really low this year, like I want to make sure that I have that time blocked. So there's no excuse and no, like I don't have time to call today, I'll call tomorrow. Then I never end up doing it. So as soon as I finished inputting all of that into Google Calendar, that's when the Pinterest came out, the pictures. And normally I like doing this in like the physical board, but since I'm traveling, there's definitely no way like I'm pulling out to all my Airbnbs with my vision board. So what I ended up doing this year was doing it in an IG story size, and then making it my phone background, which has been really great because every time I pick up my phone, I'm like seeing my vision board, which is probably many more times than when I had it hung up in a closet that I kind of just forgot looking at after a while. And that's basically the end of the year check-in life audit that I did this year, which I really enjoyed doing. Again, a huge shout out to Relay for sponsoring this video. If you have a business or if this is one of your main goals for this next year, I highly recommend opening up a free account. It's super easy to do at tools.theloragomez.com/relay. It takes less than 5 minutes. And I promise if your score wasn't that high in the money category, or if your circle of how you're spending your money made you realize like, ooh, I need to work on some things, this is going to make sure you stay on track, stay organized, and have a higher score next year. And before we go, I'm also going to leave 10 of my favorite journal prompts that helped me when I was feeling a little stuck on like, okay, what should my goal be for this category? I don't really know what I'm working towards. These journal prompts were straight to the point and really good if you just want to dig a little deeper. So here they are, and I promise they work. You can come back to this on birthdays, at the end of the month. I always love doing in like a mid-year and like quarterly check-in, and I'll probably be doing these same exact exercises. So I'll see you right back here. Bye-bye.
I see you talking over there, trying not to stare, but you like what you see. Moonwalking on the air, yeah, it ain't even fair, so on top of the beat. Better listen up, we about to make it.